members of the clergy, Mamaga, Queen Mother of Logba, and representing the Queen Mothers of Ghana, His Excellency the German Ambassador, I believe he's here, representatives of political parties, distinguished presidential aspirants, Honorable Mr. John Kwadwo Kyerematen, representatives of organizations, groups, and CSOs, media men and women, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening and a warm welcome to you all. I have been introduced by our moderator. I'm Dr. Alberta Hagen, a senior fellow and the director of Presidential Encounters and Debates Program at the IEA. The Institute of Economic Affairs appreciates your presence here this evening. This is the first in the series of evening encounters with selected presidential candidates contesting in the upcoming election on December 7, 2024. The Evening Encounter series was first initiated by the IEA in the run-up to the 2008 elections as part of the Institute's efforts to meaningfully consolidate multi-party democracy and promote issues-based election in Ghana. The Evening Encounters seek to provide platforms for the various political parties and their candidates to present their visions, plans, and strategies on how they intend to govern the country to the electorate and allow the electorate to make informed choice on election day. In addition, the Evening Encounters enable the electorate to discern what each aspirant stands for, what each aspirant intends to do, and the direction in which he or she intends to take Ghana if voted into office. The IEA expects the encounters to further promote constructive political discourse, focus on issues and policies, and thereby deepen multi-party democracy and good governance in Ghana, a path that the IEA has charted since 1989, deepening dialogue and promoting democracy. Ghana's democracy keeps evolving despite occasional disagreements, which we invariably resolve using democratic channels. We know we have not arrived at that optimal democratic state yet, but then which country has? As a nation, we need to collectively forge ahead to build our democracy. To this end, the political parties and actors are pivotal. And it is with this understanding that the IEA sees Ghana's political and democratic actors as its main allies in its effort to help strengthen Ghana's democracy. The evening encounter we are holding today and the others to follow, as well as the impending presidential debates, beyond educating the populace, have the added advantage of showcasing Ghana's maturing democracy. Today's encounter will feature an independent presidential candidate and leader of the movement for change. He's in the person of Honorable John Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen. Mr. Kyerematen is one of Africa's finest leaders with a rich CV, as you will soon learn. Very soon, Mr. Kyerematen will be addressing us. I encourage all of us to listen with rapt attention to the plans he has for Ghana and how he intends to carry them out if voted into office. After his presentation, we expect to ask Mr. Kyerematen probing questions and seek answers on how he intends to move our dear nation forward. Let me hasten to add that after today's encounter, we expect to hold additional evening encounters. For these upcoming events as well, we expect to see you all. As you've been told, we are live on television and on social media platforms. So there's an online participation of millions of persons in and out of Ghana with us now. Once again, you are very welcome. Please ask your probing questions. Mr. Alan Kyerematen is well able to answer them. And enjoy today's encounter. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Alberta Hagen. She's a senior fellow here at the Institute of Economic Affairs. We are here for one man. The man, I call him. I've heard people call him Chief. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Honorable Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen. He's a presidential candidate for the 2024 general elections in Ghana and a former Minister of Trade and Industry. He is the founder and leader of the Movement for Change, a political organization established to inspire and lead the process to change and transform Ghana into a prosperous, united, and peaceful nation. He was appointed in January 2017 as the Minister for Trade and Industry and resigned honorably in 2023 after 6 years of service to pursue his presidential ambition. He had an extensive and distinguished record in international trade, public policy, enterprise development, politics, diplomacy, and law. As Minister for Trade and Industry, he led the implementation of the government of Ghana's industrial transformation agenda, which is anchored on a 10-point plan, including the one district, one factory we've all come to know. Ladies and gentlemen, a man who needs no introduction, a Christian, a family man, one we used to call, I don't know if we still call him Alan Cash. With a thunderous round of applause and a standing ovation, if you may, help me welcome Honorable Alan John Kwadwo Kyerematen. You can keep clapping until he gets here. Good evening, Chief.
Oh, kindly sit. You can only deserve a standing ovation after you've spoken. My Lord, spiritual and temporal, the vice presidential candidate of the Movement for Change and the Butterfly Alliance, Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Mamaga Nime Name, the leadership of the Institute of Economic Affairs, with whom I've been associated for many years, the leadership of the Alliance for Revolutionary Change, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start first by commending the IEA for this initiative of organizing these presidential evening encounters, which provides an opportunity for those of us who want to lead this nation to have an encounter and an opportunity to engage with stakeholders in Ghana. Distinguished invited guests, 70 to 80% of Ghanaians in this country have given a strong indication that they do not intend to vote in the 2024 general elections. Because in their view, the two dominant parties, MPP and NDC, have failed the country for a number of reasons. The economy is in crisis. There's a high level of unemployment. There's still doomsday. Corruption is rife. Both parties have not been able to deal with galamsey. And although there's free SHS, most parents are still unable to pay for the post-second cycle education of their wards. This is the first reason why the majority of Ghanaians have made up their minds that they will not vote. Secondly, the two parties, the MPP and the NDC, have created very serious divisions in our country. Every issue in Ghana now is politicized. And there's an ongoing struggle between the MPP and the NDC. Obviously, this is not sustainable. This is not the Ghana that we all aspire to have. Number 3, the duopoly has given rise to a winner-takes-all syndrome. Once a party comes into office, all the spoils of office are reserved for only those who belong to that particular party. Number 4, you may have realized that there's a lack of continuity in the execution of government projects. It doesn't matter the value and the importance of any project that one party starts. As soon as another party comes into office, there has to be a discontinuation. Number 5, most Ghanaians want to move beyond party manifestos to a national development plan. 6, there's a desire amongst Ghanaians to have a more inclusive and representative government. That is a government of national unity. It doesn't make sense for us to have only politicians who determine the fate of all Ghanaians. What about the rest of the people in this country? Some of whom are more talented and more competent than those of us in frontline politics. Number 7, there's the need for constitutional reforms to improve the quality of governance. Government after government has paid lip service to their will and interest to execute these constitutional reforms. It still has not happened. Last but not the least, there's an urgent need for a mindset and attitudinal change amongst Ghanaians. So it's not just about us as politicians. Ghanaians have to change their attitude and mindset if we want this country to move forward. So the movement for change has been established to respond to these concerns of the ordinary Ghanaian. And in this regard, I have led the development of what I call the Great Transformational Plan, which is a new policy blueprint for Ghana's transformation and which will address many of the concerns that I have outlined above. The GTP has 6 main clusters which are interrelated and reinforce each other. Number 1, there's the economic cluster. 2, governance. 3, infrastructure. 4, social services. 5, natural resource management. And 6, and obviously not the least, attitudinal and mindset change amongst Ghanaians. Under the economic cluster, the GTP proposes far-reaching macroeconomic policy interventions that will control public expenditure, optimize revenue, stabilize the currency, reduce inflation, lower taxes and duties, lower interest rates, achieve debt sustainability, increase finance to SMEs, promote financial inclusion and deepen financial intermediation, introduce a new regime for the financing of the cocoa sector, and last but not the least, improve labor productivity. If you ever have the opportunity to read this GTP in detail, you would come to the conclusion that within a maximum of 3 years, we will stabilize the Ghanaian economy. In addition to these macroeconomic policies, the GTP proposes a comprehensive program for boosting the productive sectors of the economy through industrial transformation, a new agricultural revolution, and aggressively promoting tourism. Macroeconomic stability is a necessary condition, but it's not a sufficient condition for progress. It provides a basis for stabilization, but for you to be able to grow, you need to go beyond stabilization into investments into the productive sectors of the economy. It's the investments in industry, investments in agriculture, investments in tourism that will catalyze the growth beyond the stability that comes with macroeconomic conditions. Now, under the governance cluster of the GTP focuses primarily on a new policy of zero tolerance for corruption. Zero tolerance for corruption. Through first leadership by example, I've always said that I have never been corrupt and I'll never be corrupt. And you don't have too many individuals in Ghana who can make these statements. So first, through leadership by example. Secondly, new legislation and enforcement of existing ones, particularly introducing the concept of an anti-corruption czar. Those of you who know the concept of a czar, you will understand what I mean by an anti-corruption czar. Now, this anti-corruption czar will have prosecutorial authority which is independent of the Attorney General. The problem that the current Office of the Special Prosecutor has is that he derives his authority and mandate from the Attorney General. And obviously, it means that he cannot, in effect, be independent. You need an anti-corruption czar who has the courage and the capacity to prosecute even the president if found to be corrupt. That is what the new legislation proposals are talking about. And last but not the least, it also proposes interventions that will enhance citizens' advocacy efforts against corruption. It's not just about the people in politics, it's about citizens also understanding and appreciating that if we want to end corruption, they have a role to play. There are many people in this country driving around with flashy cars, with mansions, and it is impossible to understand how they have been able to manage to do the things that we are talking about. And all this is the citizens who can also play an additional role. Now, this governance cluster also deals with constitutional reforms that will improve the quality of governance and particularly deepen local government administration and decentralization. Under the infrastructure cluster, the GTP introduces a new paradigm for infrastructure development, which will be subject to government regulation and oversight. The problem we have with infrastructure development in Ghana is that the government believes that they have the responsibility and the capacity to finance infrastructure in this country. And when you talk about infrastructure, you're dealing with road infrastructure, you're dealing with railway, you're dealing with ports. The government will never have the capacity and the revenue base to finance infrastructure. As the Americans will say, it ain't gonna happen. And so government should stop thinking that they have what it takes to finance infrastructure in this country. So what is the solution? The solution is for government to provide the incentives for the private sector to mobilize the capital to finance infrastructure. You go to many countries in the world and you drive on all these beautiful roads. These are not funded by government. These are roads that have been built by the private sector. And obviously, it means that government should allow them to charge tolls in order for them to recover their investments. We sit here in Ghana and we think that if you allow the private sector to build an airport, it is a security risk. Major international airports are owned by the private sector. So what are we talking about? And this new paradigm that the GTP proposes, which essentially is getting the private sector to finance public expenditure in infrastructure, I believe is the key. But beyond that, this infrastructure cluster also proposes the mainstreaming of and digitalization. They are two different things. Digitization and digitalization. They are two different things. In this regard, an island government will create 100,000 hotspots, advantage points throughout the country, and this will provide free satellite internet connectivity for ordinary Ghanaians. Because if you know the cost of data, you would appreciate this policy that I'm talking about. In the area of energy, the GTP prioritizes the introduction, again, of private sector participation in the generation, transmission, and distribution of energy across the country, as well as a more aggressive transition to cleaner, renewable energy sources, including but not limited to hydrogen energy and nuclear energy, particularly based on the new technology of small modular reactors. Because as soon as you talk about nuclear energy, people get a bit uncomfortable. But there are new technologies now that completely make nuclear energy safe. And you know, it's one of the cheapest sources of energy and one of the cleanest. Yes, this will complement government's existing efforts at introducing other forms of renewable energy, such as solar and wind power. Solar energy alone cannot bridge the gap between the current level of energy generation and what we need to finance our transformation agenda. And it's very important that we look at the energy sector in a different way. Under the social services cluster, the GTP proposes improvements in the management and operationalization of the free SHS, but only after a comprehensive review in respect of the financial sustainability of the project, infrastructural requirements, curriculum development, capacity building for teachers and non-teaching staff, and then how do we transition students from SHS to tertiary education and into the world of work. It is not enough for us to enhance enrollment and not think about how we transition them into the world of work. And again, it is not acceptable in a situation where, for the first time in the history of our country, you go into a secondary school and pupils are eating in turns. 12 to 1, you finish eating, and another group then comes to take over, and then a third cycle. These point clearly to the need for us to interrogate more comprehensively the management and operations of the free SHS program. It's a fantastic program. I'm sure every government will want to continue it, but we must not resist the review of the program. The GTP also prioritizes improvements in the quality and delivery of basic and pre-basic level of education, as well as curriculum development and teaching. Free SHS is great, but all of a sudden, Ghanaians have forgotten about basic education and even pre-basic. That is where you start really developing and forming the minds of our future generation. And if you understand what is happening in our country, you would appreciate the need for us to go back to basic education and pre-basic to start orienting our children to critical thinking. What is going on in our schools, even the times that I went to ACCRA College at the age of 9. Yes, I was able to survive, but we all know, chew, pour, pass, and you have to forget it. It's part of the cycle, you know. So our curriculum orientation has to change. In the health sector, the GTP proposes interventions in the area of improving health infrastructure, financing healthcare, health service delivery, human capacity development, and the realignment of institutional architecture in the health sector. Among many other proposals, the GTP is proposing the installation of 100,000 health screening booths at various vantage points in all communities around the country to provide screening for early detection of lifestyle diseases. How do we have a situation in a country, you want to just measure your blood pressure and you have to go to Kolebu? You want to test for diabetes and you have to go to a specialist hospital. These are health screening exercises, and that is why an Allen presidency will create these 100,000 health screening booths all over the country. The interesting thing is that these booths across the country will be owned and managed by young people, graduates. So already 100,000 jobs there. And they will own these booths on a work and pay basis. So government would help with the installation, and then over time you work and you pay. After all, it's just a monitor and then some kits, and you have your own business. Now, the GTP in the health sector also proposes the full integration of herbal and traditional medicine practices in all public health care installations across the country, besides the establishment of mental health units that we currently have in our health institutions. Whether we like it or not, 60 to 70% of Ghanaians look up to herbal and traditional medicine for their healthcare needs. So we have no choice. We have to start appreciating the usefulness and the value of traditional and traditional medicine in our country. Last but not the least, the GTP proposes the introduction of what is called the GP, or General Practitioner Model for health service delivery, which will bring healthcare to the doorstep of the average Ghanaian. Those of you who have traveled abroad, every community has what we call a GP. So you don't just stand up and go to a specialist hospital. First, your first point of reference is to your general practitioner. Then your general practitioner will make a referral to another level of hospital before it even gets to the Kolebu and the Konfanochi stage. Everybody is going to a teaching hospital, and that's not sustainable. So if you see the beauty of what we are proposing, first there are these health screening booths. That's your first level interface. And then from there, if your readings are right, then you don't even need to consult your GP. But if you have a challenge, then your health screening booth will make a reference to your GP. Then your GP takes over before it gets to the district hospital, to the regional hospital, then to the tertiary hospitals. Finally, the GTP makes a new proposal to reconstruct incrementally in phases. And please, I'm choosing my words carefully. I don't want anybody to quote me that Alan says that Kolebu and Konfanochi should be demolished. I'm saying that to reconstruct incrementally in phases the two leading tertiary national hospitals, Kolebu and Konfanochi, on their existing sites. You know where these two tertiary hospitals are located. These are prime locations. But what we seem to be doing over the years with Kolebu and Konfanochi is not sustainable. You rehabilitate wards and then you do touch facelift. That's not the kind of teaching hospitals that we need. These are our best in our healthcare sector. So we need incrementally to make sure that we are bringing them up to a stage where they will become world-class facilities. Now, this will be done with the help of the private sector on a build, operate, and transfer basis. Government does not need to borrow to do this. there's a lot of money around the world, and people will be eager to help government get this proposal in place. The social services cluster also proposes a 10-point plan for youth empowerment, which includes the development and operationalization of a new digital employment platform that will create opportunities for 3 million people within the first 1.5 years of an ALAM presidency. And I had the opportunity yesterday of launching this digital platform. I don't need to wait until I become president to serve the people of this country. So I will finance the introduction of this platform. I've already launched it, so that if you make me president, I can hit the ground running. All the projects that I'm proposing in the GTP will require human resource capacity, so that we can feed our young people right away into these new sectors that we are proposing. Now, policies in support of persons with disabilities and other vulnerable groups are also reflected in the GTP. Under the Natural Resource Management Cluster, the primary focus of the GTP is on dealing with Galamsey. And the GTP again proposes a 10-point plan that will deal substantively with the challenge of Galamsey. And this includes: 1, impose a complete ban for a period of 1 year on small-scale community mining, whether legal or illegal. Right now, there's a thin line between legal and illegal mining. 2, the restoration of all water bodies to reduce the level of turbidity. We have technologies globally that can bring our waters and our rivers to the level predating the introduction of Galamsey. Within 1 year, we can clean all our river bodies. It's just through technology. But you need to put a ban for at least for 1 year. This is a transitional period within which you will clean our water bodies. Number 3, the regeneration of all degraded land sites in mining communities through reforestation, which will offer at the same time livelihood employment opportunities for those young people who are currently engaged in Galamsey. So it's not just a question of imposing a ban, but within that 1 year period, you are regenerating the lands, giving opportunities to the young people, and then you are also cleaning your river bodies. Number 4, the demobilization of all machinery and equipment that are currently used in small-scale and community mining under the supervision of the military. If you demobilize equipment, you need to do 3 things. First, you need to keep them under inventory. 2, you need to have them properly stored, storage. And 3, you have to make sure that you preserve them. This practice of burning equipment does not make any sense. And that is why the GTP is proposing that you demobilize the equipment, you inventorize them so that you know who had what, and then you store them properly, and then later on you make sure that you preserve them. Otherwise, after 1 year, you find that they are all out of use. Number 5, and this is really the sweetener in the pudding, the creation of youth-owned mining companies to be owned by those young people who are currently doing Galamsey. Now, these companies will be provided with seed capital by government to acquire the kind of machinery and equipment that will help them mine in a responsible manner. And so this 1 year period is only helping to prepare the young people for a brighter future in mining. So it's not a ban to demobilize them. It is ready to get them now into proper sustainable mining. And it's government's responsibility to make sure that you bring these groups together and then you facilitate the creation of these young companies for these young people to bring them into mainstream mining. And I've done this in industry, in agriculture, and I know it works. So all of a sudden, those young people who are now being condemned to their fate, give me 1 year after Alan becomes president, and they all become very rich and wealthy people. And because they may not have the capacity to manage these companies, they will be provided with management extension assistance by professionals from the Ghana Executive Service Organization, which I'm also going to create. There are many competent people in Ghana who have worked in the corporate sector, in the financial services sector, in the military, who are sitting at home at the age of 60, but have so much to offer to this country. We are wasting our talents. So this Ghana Executive Service Organization will pull all of these talents together to support some of these issues. And I can speak with authority on this because I had the honor and privilege of being a council member of the British Executive Service Organization, which is basically the counterpart of this organization that I want to create in Ghana. Last but not the least, the introduction of new legislation and regulations that will impose a complete ban on any form of mining in river bodies and forest reserves. That is a complete ban. Now, again, with an associated sanctions regime, including life imprisonment for the violation of these new laws. Ghanaians, you need to get to a point where when you punish them, they'll feel the impact of the punishment. If it's just a question of 10 years in jail, the amount of money that they may be getting from Galamsey, it will not be enough deterrence. They will go in 10 years, come back and continue. So we have to be serious about how we deal with Galamsey. Another important policy intervention in the area of natural resource management is to introduce new legislation that will significantly reduce the export of raw materials from Ghana without value addition. And I've made a commitment that by 2030 in this country, if Alan becomes president, no raw material will be exported in its raw form unless there's a minimum of 60% value addition. How is it that for 100 years, Ghana has only depended on one commodity, cocoa? So we can't think beyond cocoa. And even with that, the level of value addition is only about 40%. The real value in cocoa is not in the cocoa beans, it's in the final product, which is chocolate. And we need to bring back some of that value to our cocoa farmers. Cocoa farmers happen to be some of the poorest in our society. And again, it's unfortunate. Now, furthermore, I'm proposing the amendment of Article 2576 of the 1992 Constitution to establish traditional authorities as co-trustees with the President in respect of all natural resources. The Constitution cannot bestow absolute rights to the President over all natural resources. And the President delegates that authority and responsibility to public officials in the Minerals Commission, and they issue licenses. You own a plot of land. In fact, you have built on your land, and somebody comes to you with a mining license from Minerals Commission that he has been given the authority to prospect for gold under your building. That's the kind of regime that we want in our country. And we have to, it's important, there's too much power in the hands of the presidency under our Constitution. And And the traditional authorities who in actual fact hold the land in trust for the people under their jurisdiction, they have to have a say. It's not only the president who must have the say. See, so even before becoming president, I'm curtailing my own powers. And I think that's how it should be. The last cluster in the GTP is on attitudinal and mindset change. And even though this comes at the end, for me, it is probably the most important. Now, this cluster is predicated on the principle that all thriving democracies and matured economies are anchored on the respect for law and order, enforcement of discipline, a positive attitude to work, a passion for excellence and meritocracy, and the spirit of patriotism and national consciousness. These are the values that have made great nations the great nations of the world. Do we have these values enshrined in us as Ghanaians? The answer obviously is no. And that is why the GTP is focusing on these attitudinal and mindset changes in Ghana. That is the only way that the transformation that is envisaged under the GTP can become a reality. There are values, and I believe that if we respect law and order, if we are patriotic, if we move away from mediocrity to excellence, Ghana will rise again. Now, there's no doubt that many Ghanaians believe that Alan Kyerematen is the right alternative to the two dominant parties. There's no doubt about that. If you ask everybody, they'll tell you that we know that Alan can get the job done. On account of vision, competence, integrity, capacity for action, character, and charisma. And I'm sure that people know this for a fact. The challenge that many of these Ghanaians have had is that they've been wondering that if they vote for Alan, would they be wasting their votes? I want to tell you, regrettably, that this mindset has been the result of extensive negative propaganda. It is a propaganda. People go around, oh, Alan is a fine gentleman. You talk about money, we know. But let me tell you, my advice to you, the people of Ghana, is that if you vote for Alan, believing that he is the one who can get the job done, and everybody who is looking for change also votes for Alan, then automatically Alan will win. And this is logic, simple deductive reasoning. You say Alan can do the job. You vote for Alan. Let the other person vote for Alan. If 70% of Ghanaians are saying that they want change, and they see Alan representing that change, is it not automatic? Just do your job. Let everybody else do his job. And then you get what you want, and change will come. Ladies and gentlemen, even at the risk of sounding boastful, I like to say that I have a distinguished record of service, both in the public and private sectors, in Ghana and also internationally. In fact, in 1994, Time International magazine voted me as one of the most influential 100 global leaders who were likely to change the fortunes of the world when the new millennium was approaching, and everybody was wondering what the world would become like. 1994, looking for 100 leaders in the world. They first mentioned Bill Gates. They mentioned Jeffrey Sachs, who is one of the leading development economists in the world. They mentioned John F. Kennedy Jr., who was likely to become the president of the United States. They mentioned Condoleezza Rice, who eventually became the Secretary of State of the United States. They mentioned Alan Kyerematen of Ghana. So I think that in all humility, my record is clear. And this is 1994. I was also selected as Africa's candidate for the position of Director General of the World Trade Organization in 2013 by the heads of state of Africa. And indeed, I was the front runner to become the new Director General for the WTO Director General, if it was the conspiracy of another African country that sought to divide the African vote. But remember that there are 4 key global positions in the world: Secretary General of the United Nations, the President of the World Bank, the Managing Director of the IMF, and the Director General of the WTO. So if in 2013, all the heads of state of Africa deemed it fit to nominate me to become the Director General of the WTO, make Alan the president and Ghana will rise again. Indeed, I'm also credited as the chief architect and one of the leading negotiators for the African Continental Free Trade Area. I also led the campaign to make Ghana the headquarters of the AFCFTA. You talk about these things, and Ghanaians say, "Nasi anymore, we didn't know." You say it, they say they still don't know. So that's why I said, even at the risk of sounding boastful, I want you to know. And let me conclude by saying that if you vote for Alan, there will be change and Ghana will rise again. I thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think the man Alan Cash deserves another round of applause. Honorable Alan has touched on major areas that worries a number of people. He's touched on Galamsey, he's touched on particularly attitudinal change of the ordinary Ghanaian, to the extent of even touching on curtailing or limiting the powers of the president, and he intends to be president. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you have many questions to ask him. And Chief, I'm sure you're ready. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, you're reminded that we are live on City TV, also known as Channel 1 TV. We are also live on Adowa TV. It may interest you to know that this is not only in Ghana. In fact, radio stations in New York, in Germany, in New Jersey, in other countries are taking the live stream, and they will be playing it on their radio stations. Ladies and gentlemen, I think at this point, the Institute of Economic Affairs deserves a thunderous round of applause. Now the floor is open. If you have questions, and I'm sure you have many questions to ask him, the floor is open. Please make your way to my left, and you can ask your questions. We'll take 4 sets of questions for now, and then Honorable would answer the questions. Yes, sir. Please, if you may walk forward for me. So as they come and you're seated, you could encourage them with a clap. Please, you state your name for us, and then you ask your question. Yes, sir.
All right. My name is Boaz, a reporter from Adom TV, and I have 4 questions here to ask.
4?
Yes.
And I don't think we can take all 4.
Okay, so let me...
So ask the most important one.
All right.
Yes, please.
So, Your Excellency, how will you address the country's burden? How will you address the country's debt burden? And also, how will you improve access to quality education, especially in the rural areas? Sanitary pass is one of the major problems for women in Ghana. How will you tackle that? Your Excellency, thank you very much.
Yes, please, you can ask your question. Your name first.
Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shaibu Adamu. I'm with the Islamic Education Unit. Before I ask my question, I must say I am very proud to have witnessed our father here. He has lined up great communicators. Anytime I watch TV, I think that his communicators are doing a good job for him. Yes, that one I have to say. And we need to have more of such young men who communicate without any foul language that we most sometimes see or hear on the radio and TV. Thank you so much. One thing that you talked about that touched me is the educational sector, because I'm in the education sector. So my question is, at the basic level, you mentioned the basic and then the pre-basic. What do you want to do there? Because I think that the basic has been neglected for far so long, and that is a worry to me, because that's my sector. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please, we'll take one more question and then Chief would answer. But please, when you come, please keep it one question. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Michael Dede. I like the fact that you talk about mindset change in your clusters. But I was very disappointed with today's event, in the fact that we're scheduled to be here at 4 o'clock and start at 4:30. Unfortunately, we didn't. And I think that the issue of mindset change must begin by how you carry yourself and how the program is organized. It's very important, because I think it showed disrespect for people like Justice Amy Schultz, who came here at 4 o'clock. And I think that is not fair. We are serious about mindset change. I think we need to begin it now and demonstrate it. Maybe it may not be your fault, maybe an IEA issue, but if it is, that is part of the problem. That is the part of the problem that we need to deal with as a society, and we need to take that very seriously. I think that as Ghanaians, we have a tolerance for bad behavior, and that is what we need to challenge at every pace of the, no matter what political party it is, we must change our habits. Our tolerance for bad behavior is too much. The good news is that I have decided to vote for Alan. Because in my own sincere opinion, the political parties are no better than criminal organizations in Ghana at the moment. And to be able to change and tell them to go and think about it, we need to vote for change. And for me, that is the only good news I have for you. But seriously, we need to begin the issue of attitude change now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I think I have to address that. This has nothing to do with Honorable Alan's team or Honorable Alan himself. We were scheduled to be seated at 4 p.m. and the event was scheduled to start at 5 p.m. and the event did not start late. So ladies and gentlemen, if you were communicated otherwise, then it was a mistake, and for which we apologize. But the event was scheduled to start at 5 p.m. and for guests to be seated at 4 p.m. So Honorable Alan and the Movement for Change, they have nothing to do with this. And in fact, IEA did stick to its time, and if you got any information to the contrary, then we do apologize. Please, Honorable Alan, we'll take the last question and then we would move on. Please, our only lady for now. Please give her a round of applause.
Good evening, sir. It is a great pleasure to meet you. My name is Nanaya Dobia Jakwa, a Basic 9 student of God's Grace International School, South Tesano. My question for you today is that, what would you do for the cocoa farmers who have been affected by Galamsey?
So Honorable, I think so we don't get mixed up with all the questions, we would take the answer from you for the first 3 questions.
Okay, thank you.
No, Honorable, please, you can sit down.
Okay.
Yes,
All
please.
right, okay. I'm wired up already, so
Yes, please.
you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, first, I think the gentleman from Adom TV, it's an excellent question, because You see, what has happened in this country is that for several decades, we have been caught in what I call a debt trap. Not death, debt trap. We have been borrowing from government to government to finance consumption. See, if you borrow to finance consumption, then obviously you cannot grow your economy. And it is regrettable that all the debt that we've piled upon ourselves now has done only two things: to pay salaries and then also to pay other loans that we have contracted. So it means that it is not possible for you to grow. And you continue borrowing to finance consumption and to amortize your existing debt. And there's very little left to invest in capital expenditure. So there's something, we've been running an artificial economy for many years. And that's the problem with our two parties, the NDC and NPP. We have been running an artificial economy for all these years. How is it that over 32 years, each party lands us in the IMF? Both of them, getting to their 8th year, they finish off with the IMF. So what is the basis and the justification for asking for an extension of your mandate? Now, so to deal with our debt problem, first, we have to put a cap by legislation on the amount of borrowing that government. You see, it looks like we are joking. If you go to the US right now, I'm sure you hear the news about government is going to shut down. Government will going to shut down, and they have to negotiate amongst the parties to allow the Senate and the House of Representatives for government to go beyond the threshold for which they can borrow. Now, there's no threshold. There was an artificial attempt to impose a 5%, cap on our deficit financing. But the same government goes to Parliament to ask for a review of that capping. So it means that we have allowed ourselves to be disciplined about borrowing. And because we don't have the right model for development, and we think that government should finance everything, then obviously you would want to borrow to finance everything. And it's not sustainable. And our debt has accumulated to such an extent that I don't want to sound like a prophet of doom. But frankly, if both parties continue in any form or shape, it will be very difficult for us to get out of this debt trap. Now, the second is to bring the private sector into the financing of development projects. And that's what I've been trying to talk about. Because if the private sector is borrowing on their own accord to finance the construction of roads, hospitals, and things like that, government relieves itself of the burden of borrowing to do the same thing. For many years, Ghanaians believe that it is only government that should build universities. True or false? For many years, that was it. Now, over the last 2 decades, when it became obvious that government could not finance the expansion of tertiary education, and we opened the gate for the private sector to come in. You know how many universities we have in Ghana now? I mean, it's between night and day. So it's a question of policy orientation. And what we've done in the educational sector, particularly tertiary education, reinforces the point that I'm making. Now, so that's the second. The third one is for government to appreciate the fact that it is only when you produce or support the production, particularly for export, that you can earn more revenue. Because you can't finance development with cities. In some cases you can do that, but for Many cases, you need foreign exchange to be able to finance your development expenditure. So if you are not exporting, how do you hope to get foreign exchange to finance your development? So you have no choice. You are not exporting. You don't have forex, so you have to borrow. And then you keep on getting into this spiral. So we have to export. How many times have you heard any president in Ghana talk about exports since independence? Now, FDI, foreign direct investment. Yes, mobilizing the private sector in Ghana is absolutely critical because it's the accumulation of indigenous capital that in the long run will save any country. But there's no evidence of any country anywhere in the world that has grown in superlative terms without foreign direct investment. Even the almighty America goes around looking for foreign direct investment because FDI is a substitute for borrowing. If people are prepared to bring their money to invest in your country, then you don't need to borrow. And last but not the least, in some cases, we have to be able to negotiate for debt relief, not only when you are in trouble. President Kufuor's regime, I had the opportunity of being a minister. Our first 2 cabinet meetings, when the books were opened to us, we started regretting whether it was worth looking for power. But then we were saved by the decision of the president that we have no choice but to negotiate for debt relief through the HIPIC program. So if you have the right leadership, you know how to deal with your debt. So that's the first question. I think quality of education, first, it has to do with infrastructure. The infrastructure that you have. Secondly, your curriculum. Third, teachers. You know, at first when you had teachers, you know that they're real teachers. And we seem to have been forgetting about teachers. And then it's also about financing of education, which I've already referred to. So this is, in my view, how we deal with improving the quality of education. And last but not the least, sanitary pads. And I had the opportunity of supporting some companies under the One District, One Factory program to start manufacturing sanitary pads in Ghana. So producing sanitary pads is not rocket science. By now, we should have had so many companies that government has supported to produce. Why should we import sanitary pads? And if we produce them locally, the cost will come down. And then it's something that is it's a health challenge for many young girls. And I think we have to be able to encourage local production of sanitary pads. Number 2, my friend from the Islamic Educational Institution, I'm very happy that you concur with me on my views on focusing on basic education and pre-basic education. So it's the same points that I raised earlier on. The level of infrastructure for basic education. How is it that Ghana still has people studying under trees? Are you aware that there are many communities in Ghana where peoples are studying under trees in this day and age? So it's about infrastructure, but it's also about the curriculum. How do we orient our children, pre-basic and basic, to this whole new paradigm of critical thinking? It's also about the teachers. If you need, if you want to improve basic education and pre-basic, it's also about teachers. And incentivizing teachers also to focus on that. And of course, last but not least, is also financing basic education. That's the way I would look at it. Now, mindset change. I'm happy that I was saved by the IEA, because I was asked to be here at 5 o'clock, and you attest to it. I was here exactly at 5 o'clock. I cannot be preaching mindset change and not live up to it. So, my brother, thank you for your vote in advance. But I need a receipt for that, so that at least I know I have one vote. Then our young lady, fantastic question. Is it Nana Adubia? Cocoa farmers and the destruction of our cocoa farms by Galamsey. First is the 10-point agenda that I'm proposing. And this is a short-term comprehensive program to deal with Galamsey. If Alan becomes president, we put the 10-point agenda in place. Within that 1 year, you'll find that people are getting back to their cocoa farms because it's all in it, the 10-point agenda. But beyond that, people are also becoming disinterested in cocoa farming because all our parents and grandparents who used to be in cocoa farming are getting older and older. And the young ones are not interested in cocoa farming. So we have to start making it attractive. Because it's not attractive, the farmers are themselves abandoning their farms. It's not just that the Galamsey people are focused, the people themselves feel that if they can sell their land to Galamseyers, they'll earn more money than they would ever dream of if they were cultivating their land for cocoa. And I made a major proposal in my GTP that it is unfortunate that for all these decades, government is borrowing in dollars every year, $2 billion to finance the purchasing of cocoa. Meanwhile, cocoa farmers are not paid in dollars. Why are we borrowing to buy cocoa when we know that we don't use dollars to pay for cocoa beans? And I'm happy that I said that if we're buying or mobilizing a local currency to pay for cocoa, which is what we do anyway, it means that when we sell our cocoa, and we are supposed to get $2 billion from the sale of cocoa, all the $2 billion will come intact into our economy. And that is what is going to improve our reserves. You don't sell cocoa and then bring the money in only to pay for your loans. So it becomes in and out. And I'm happy that I put this out and I was campaigning it for aggressively. And lo and behold, government has already adopted the proposal. You know, even though they had been negotiating for the loan, all of a sudden they said that they don't need to borrow again. So it means that my policies are already working, which is what I'm looking for. So, Madam, I think that's the first set of questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chief. We'll take the next set of questions. I think we can encourage them with a clap, don't you think so?
Good evening, Honorable. My name is Elizabeth Ado from Class FM. I heard you talk about tackling illegal mining and putting a ban and even arresting those who involved. So my question is, President Kwadwo once placed his presidency on the line to fight illegal mining, but now he is not saying anything about it. Even when the GJA president talked about it in his presence, he remained silent. So the question is, how are we to trust your words and your promise to tackle illegal mining when you are voted into power and not just any political promises to win votes? Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Okay, so I'm Lloyd from University of Ghana, final year economics student.
Lloyd what?
Lloyd Christian Osiamwaku. Okay, so my question is still about our debt and our revenue. Over the years, our debt has been increasing, but you spoke about FDIs, but most of your policies that you outlined, they are government policies. So how will you use FDI to finance those activities? Number two, a lot of people in Ghana evade tax, especially those in the informal sector? As we know, over 40% of the population works in the informal sector. How will we get to raise revenue from those people? And outside tax and outside tax, how do you intend to raise revenue? Because you can't say that we are putting a cap on our debt, then at the end of the day, how will we finance other activities? So can you outline some revenue ways of that you can generate revenue to sponsor these activities? Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd.
My name is Cyril Kufigbo, student of economics at the University of Ghana. So the University of Ghana is on strike because of failure to pay Tier 2 pension and then overtime allowance. So I would like to ask Honorable John Kyerematen, if his government comes to power, what will they do about strike actions of work groups? What would he do about it? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take the lady and the gentleman and then we'll pause.
Good evening. My name is Ohima Chimensa of Achimota Senior High School. And my question for the candidate is that the NDC candidate John Mahama has the project plan to replace the current economy to a 24-hour economy. In theory, this may be one of the many benefits to the country's economy. Assuming you went into office, would you put this project into motion, though it isn't yours, or cast it aside?
Thank you. I think she deserves a round of applause, don't you think so? Thank you.
Good evening, sir. I'm Felix Chema from God's Grace International School, South Essano. Sir, I trust in your powers and I know you can do a lot. I decided not to vote, but I think I'm getting convinced listening to you. However, there's only one issue I want you to be emphatic on. What is your position on LGBTQ++? Thank you.
Chief, would you like to answer so we can move on? Okay.
I don't know where. Can you hear me? Yes, sorry. Yes. Again, we have these excellent questions. The first is in respect of how can they believe that I can deal with Galamsey. And you made reference to the fact that His Excellency the President put his presidency on the line. But obviously, you know I cannot sit here and answer for the President. But the only reason why you should believe in what I'm telling you is that I have given you a 10-point plan. See, that makes a difference. See, when there's clarity about how you intend to deal with a particular problem, then you provide a basis for measuring performance. And you can audit my 10-point plan, and if you are being objective, you'd agree with me that this is the way to deal with Galamsey. But it actually even goes beyond that. I also have proposed a medium to long-term solution to Galamsey. It's all about poverty. It's all about financial insecurity. If people have jobs, they will not go to the extent of risking their lives. If you've gone to any Galamsey mining community, you know that, yes, it may be profitable, but you must be lucky to stay alive. Now, these young people in mining communities have literally nothing to do. And many of them are pushed into this because those who have the mining licenses are people in high offices who are hiding behind the curtain and pushing these young people into Galamsey. And so, follow my 10-point plan and we'll deal with Galamsey. Now, Lloyd, I think you made a very important intervention saying that my model of bringing in the private sector to finance development agenda, it is still government that has to deal with it. But that's exactly what governments are for. the responsibility of a government is to initiate policy. And I can tell you, never believe any politician who tells you that it is difficult to do this or that. All you need to do is to have the right policies. I say this on authority because when we came into office under President Kwadwo, and I was made the Minister for Trade and Industry, I made a conscious decision to identify new strategic sectors to diversify our economy. I wanted us to go beyond cocoa. So I listed about 10 other new sectors: pharmaceutical industry, bauxite and aluminium, iron and steel. All these, and I added vehicle assembly and the automotive industry. And why did I say that? Because I've looked at all the 10 leading economies in the world. They also happen to be the ones that have the most robust auto assemblies. Name them: United States, China, Japan, Korea, Germany, France. There must be something about the auto sector which contributes to the development of these economies. So in my mind, it was just a deductive reasoning. And so I decided that we'll start building cars here. As you are asking, so how was I going to do it? I just took my time to develop a policy, to attract foreign investment into the auto sector. Within a matter of 1.5 years, I've been able to attract 5 out of the 6 global companies in the world, just through pen and paper. We have not spent even $1. At first, people did not believe me. But within 1.5 years, Toyota is producing in Ghana, Nissan is producing in Ghana, Peugeot is in Ghana, Volkswagen is in Ghana, Kia is producing, Hyundai is producing. It has never happened before in any, I would say, emerging economy, where you would have a global auto company comes into a small market and is producing 5 different models at the start. And I think I can see, is that this Kalmoni here, he owns Nissan, yes. So you can ask Kalmoni. Right from the beginning, they never believed what I was saying. But look at what we are doing in Ghana now. And it is acknowledged all over the world now. The auto companies themselves are citing Ghana as an example. The man is here who attest to this. And the kind of cars we are producing in Ghana are comparable to the ones that are produced anywhere in the world. Kamoni, for example, now produces the Navara pickups. These are new generation pickups produced by Nissan. And apart from Brazil, Ghana is the next country where they are producing that. So we are not celebrating ourselves in this country. But I want to tell the young man, don't let any politician confuse you. If you get the right leaders, all these things, it's just through policy. And you see that the investments will come. But the interesting thing about what I've done in the area of vehicle assembly is that I'm not only interested in assembly, I'm actually interested in component manufacturing. So before I left office, I also introduced new policy that within the next 2 years, we'll be producing our own spare parts in Ghana to feed the assembly companies. So Ghana will be moving on. Now, then I think he also made a very important point about the informal sector. I think you even understated the extent of the informal sector in our economy. We're talking 40%. It's about 80%. It's about 80%. The truth of the matter is that unless government has a program to support the informal sector operators to transition into the formal sector. They will remain in the informal sector. They are in the informal sector because they don't have access to financing. No bank will seriously look at anybody in the informal sector. So they remain small because of financial exclusion. And that is why, if you look at the GTP, we have a very robust program to move people from the informal sector to the formal sector. When this happens and they are formalized, you will start expanding your tax base because they become more formal, and then you can recognize what they are doing, and they also benefit from government incentives. So it's a win-win. And I agree with you that the key is to start formalizing the informal sector. And then you talked about revenue generation. The government has no business overspending. And that's why I was talking about capping. You have to cut your clothes according to the size of what? Cut your coat according to the size of your cloth. Yes. So government has to be disciplined about expenditure. And that's why I told you about expenditure management and control. But once you control expenditure, you also have to optimize your revenue. And there are proposals that you find in the GTP. One is expanding the tax net, as I've explained to you. Second is making sure that you reduce the leakages, particularly from our port operations. The amount of money that is lost from our port operations can literally change the fortunes of this economy. And again, at the risk of sounding boastful, once we got into government in 2017, and I realized that because I am interested in trade and moving goods from Ghana outside and bringing in goods, I brought in a new trade and customs management system called the Unipass. And in 2017, when I brought this system into Ghana, I was put under so much negative pressure, and of course people had an interest in the existing system because obviously the leakages were to the advantage of them. I stood my ground and I brought the system, and I can now attest to you, with all the negative propaganda, and even during COVID time, the first 3 months that we piloted the new program, Ghana earned more than 1 billion Ghana cedis from port revenue, just within a matter of 3 months. Now, it was introduced in 2020. Revenue from our ports at that time was 19 million per annum. 2023, I'm proud to say that it's moved to about 33 or 36 million Ghana cedis. So you can see the difference. It's all a question of being able to introduce systems that will block the leakages. Of course, the other one is to restructure GRA. You're talking about revenue optimization. You cannot optimize revenue without getting into GRA and understanding what happens there. And of course, because of time, I could go on and on. But I recommend the GTP to you. You read about debt management control, revenue optimization, expenditure control, and all those principles are there. Last but not the least was a lady from the economic student, is that right? Yes, yeah, Chimata School. 24-hour economy. Unfortunately, I cannot explain the 24-hour economy on behalf of my friend and brother, former President John Mahama. But I can give you a better one. I'm talking about an enterprise economy. You see, what is a 24-hour economy? What are you doing in that 24-hour economy? That is what is important. I'm talking about an enterprise economy, an economy that brings prosperity, an economy that prioritizes business rather than government control. Again, all the matured economies in the world, they are all enterprise economies. Again, the ones that I listed. Even China is an enterprise economy. So the key is Ghana having an enterprise economy. If Alan becomes president, Ghana will have an enterprise economy. And that, I think, is the way forward.
Thank you, Chief. I see a number of stakeholders here, and we've not heard from our stakeholders. So I'll take one question from the lovely lady here, and we would hear from our stakeholders. I see Professor Jampo here. We mentioned Kalmoni. I'm pretty sure, I think I saw Mr. Emil Short, who's just leaving. But we have a number of stakeholders here who have to speak before we leave. So please, the beautiful lady, you could clap for the beautiful lady.
Good evening, Honorable. My name is Miriam. I'm a broadcast journalist. I would like to find out, in fact, I have not heard your voice. I've not quite heard your voice on the current happenings with the protesters who went out there to seek a better economy for us, especially regarding the Galamsey conversation. I've not quite heard your voice. And you said earlier that you are already working, even though you haven't assumed office, so would like to hear from you. Again, with the issue of attitudinal change, I am wondering how you are going to do that, and so would like to hear that from you, how you intend making that happen. Again, we have a huge maintenance culture issue in Ghana. We want to find out how you want to fix that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Miriam. Yes, sir. Yeah, please, if you may. Yes, please. When he's done, all our key stakeholders. Oh, so right after him, and then, yeah.
Good evening. Chief, you still have the LGBT question to answer.
Yes, okay, very well. Sorry, I missed it.
Mine is, there are quite a number of questions in my mind, but mine is a very simple question. Mine has got to do with, what would you do with your appointees who are interested in personal interest? How do you, there should be something we can do about it. I don't think we should say there isn't much we could do about it, because it is killing our country today. I mean, the situation of VRA today, what they're trying to do with VRA today, is personal interest. How would you look at that? Number two, how would you be able to tell us when your economy gets into a crunch, you will not take us into IMF? Thank you.
That was my brother. My name is Nanaya Champim Jantwa. I don't know whether to call him Bra Chief or Chief. Find it uncomfortable to call him Chief. He's my big brother. Bra Chief, good evening.
Good evening.
MPP has lost a gem. As I was sitting there, I said, wow, this man is great. Yes. But Bra Chief, you don't talk about PSI a lot. As one of your achievements, the Presidential Special Initiative on Governments and Cassava. It was great, and through that, we had Agua. I used to work with him when I was at Free Zones. And out of that came the Friday wear, traditional Friday wear that we still, do. My second question is, you said you're going to privatize the utilities, transmission, generation, distribution. With transmission, how are you going to do that? Because it's more of a national security thing. That is the vehicle that wheels your electricity all over the country. How are you going to do that? And what is your plan for adding value to our natural resources, gold, cocoa, bauxite, adding value for exports, since you are very well versed in the export sector? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Nanaya Jantwa. Mr. Odike, Please, a round of applause to Mr. DK. Mr. DK is a businessman, if you don't know him already.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. The next president of the republic. I know you from the days of Empretech. But when you were tabling your achievements, you didn't mention it. And also, there's a brouhaha about Commander Sugar Factory. It has been a serious beef between MPP and NDC. I want you to clarify it as you've been a minister of that sector before. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll take the very last one from the gentleman. Professor Jampo, I think we would like to hear from you too, and then Chief can speak.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Isaac, you mentioned financing most of your governmental projects, making use of the private sector. But then you need to know that they are going to try to recoup their losses. Therefore, they are going to monetize certain sectors. So now how do you plan to supervise these kind of things? And looking at the telecommunication industry, you are going to realize that it's heavily privatized. And now there's a high rise in data costs. But the government is struggling to do anything. So even with this, if we can't, how much more routes, airports, stadia, and other important sectors? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, good evening. I think I didn't have any question, but if you force me, I would ask. Honorable Alan, I want you to comment on what I call presidential temperament. Presidential temperament. So we have a sitting president who goes around and sees some chiefs sitting and yells at them. We have a certain president who goes to an event and he insists that there is a national anthem being played, and he found out some chiefs were seated, and then he orders, the gestures were very bad, his minister to go tell those chiefs who are seated. And then just about this weekend or so, I'm told, in fact I watched the GGA president making a certain call to the effect that those who have been arrested following their demonstration were treated with some high-handedness, and so the president should intervene. And when he went to sit, we saw the gestures of the president, very arrogant. But the president is the holder of the fiduciary trust of the people. And so I have not seen some before. This presidential temperament, I've not seen some before. And I need you to comment on it. I know you won't do that, but I need you to comment on this that I refer to as presidential temperament. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Jampo. We'll take the very last one, and then the very last one.
Hello, good evening, Honorable Alan. My question is...
can you announce yourself?
Yes, my name is Samuel Agri, Food and Beverage Association of Ghana. Now, I want to know, if you become a president, how long will it take you to amend the Constitution by reducing the powers of the president? The other one is, how would you harmonize the taxes that we have? So many taxes, and we're always complaining about. How are you going to harmonize it to make sure that we have a simple tax system, to make sure Ghanaians are not shortchanged by paying high taxes? And then the third one is, what are you going to do in stabilizing the city? Because that is the bloodline of our businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you who asked questions. Chief would answer the questions and we'll be out of here shortly. Chief, over to you.
Excellent questions. First, is it from Miriam? The first was in respect of my comment on the demonstration that was recently organized under the auspices of the Democracy Hub. Actually, I'm surprised because I specifically organized a press conference on Sunday, and I spoke extensively about this and made it clear that there's a certain culture of intolerance that is creeping into our national body politic. And by extension, a certain level of sycophancy from people in very high places. Nobody is talking. And it's amazing. You meet people in quiet places, and I cannot understand how people are overcome with fear. What is your problem? Who are you afraid of? Is it the gaping sycophancy that people were used to during the first regime? Everybody is trying to succumb to, power and authority. Is this how far we have come? We are basically abandoning our values and our principles as Ghanaians. But when you do that, politicians will always make sure that they keep you where you are. And I made these comments during my press conference that you are even lucky that you have young people who have been the subject and victims of non-performance by two dominant parties, MPP and ANC. It's not only about MPP, both parties. For 32 years, there are people who have finished school for 5-6 years. They don't have a job. And to add insult to injury, they can no longer even expect that they will have good drinking water in the next year or two. You see what happened in Kenya? You see what happened in Nigeria? Are we going to allow our young people to take to the streets in a more violent way before we start holding our politicians their feet to fire? Respectable people in the society, nobody is talking. And the young people are out in the streets. Don't get me wrong. I'm not condoning, unruly behavior. But the point is that if you push young people who are desperate and they have no hope for the future, they don't have an income, they are still staying with their parents, they cannot get married, they can't even expect that they can build a family. This is a national security risk. And the older generation who are not talking, it's amazing how we have come to this situation where everybody is hiding. And so, yes, the young men, and admittedly, and I made it very clear. I'm sorry that, Miriam, maybe you didn't listen to me. So I'm now wondering, it means that when I talk, maybe people are not listening. Because I had a press conference, an extensive one. And I said that, yes, admittedly, the young people went into excess. There were things that they did which I will never condone. Everybody who knows me knows that I don't condone that kind of behavior. They went overboard. But then, and I even praised the police for their professional management of the demonstrators during the 3-day period. How is it that after 3 days, you manage in such a professional way a demonstration, and then on the 3rd day you arrest them and you charge them with unlawful assembly? Can you believe this? You are drinking tea with them on the first day. You are judging and you are happy, until I think they went overboard. Then you got a little bit worried and you arrested them. 3 days you were with them. There was no problem. Third day they went to Bobo, you arrested them, and you charged them conspiracy to commit unlawful assembly, and then unlawful assembly. How? And we have the Attorney General and the police bringing this kind of charge against these young people. As I speak now, they are in detention, and they are moving them from one detention to the other, denying them access to their families, to legal counsel, and for some of them to their medication, food and water. What is happening in this country, I don't want to sound like a prophet of doom, but we have to be serious. So I commented on it. I said, this is not acceptable. The police did well during the demonstration, but the post-arrest management is both unlawful and unconstitutional. So you arrest them, 48 hours, you are required by law to put them before a court of competent jurisdiction. So you quickly develop a charge sheet, and this, when you do things in haste, this is what happens. First count, unlawful assembly. When you were aware that this assembly protest was going on, and you were with them, you know, so that was my first worry about the police. And secondly, why are you denying them? Why are you denying them access to their legal right? Because remember, everybody in Ghana has a constitutional right for speech, free speech, and free movement and assembly. Of course, if you go in excess, then the law will take care of you. But after you have been arrested, our jurisprudence is clear. You are deemed to be innocent until you are found guilty. So why are we putting them into this state? And to make matters worse, they are put before different courts. And our judges have refused them bail. Even murderers, by law and by judicial precedents, cannot be denied bail unless there's really the need to deny them bail. How can you charge somebody with misdemeanor, which is a minor offense under our criminal code? You charge them with a misdemeanor, and you are refusing them bail. It doesn't add up. As a lawyer, that's why I spoke out, you know. So it is the wrong, it is an abuse of judicial discretion. What the justices have done, it's an abuse of judicial discretion. And you can see easily that it is motivated by political influence. That a judge cannot make a statement about why they are denying accused persons bail for a misdemeanor. You ask lawyers who understand this business. So there must be something behind it. Or we'll teach you sense. Is that what we are talking about? And everybody, older people in this society, they are talking. Everybody is quiet. Why are people not speaking out? And I'm surprised that I had a press conference and maybe Miriam did not hear me speak, you know. And you see, the point is that why did they go into the streets? They went into the streets because of Galamsey. So all of us are not worried about Galamsey. We are not worried. And are we not the ones who should be speaking out in defense of these young people? Even if they went overboard, yes, let us criticize them for that. But now they are in cells. I have made sure that I've paid for legal representation for some of them. And yesterday I went to the cells to see some of them. You know, Ghana, we have to be very careful because we are treading on very dangerous grounds now. So that's the first thing. Miriam, I'm sorry that you didn't hear about this. Attitudinal change. In fact, the reason why you should believe me that I know what I'm about, how many times have you heard any serious political leader even identifying this issue as a matter for national debate? Yes, so I've done that, and I know why I've done that. And I've given you specific areas where we need to be careful about. First, arrogance of power. Arrogance of power. Number 2, attitude to work. Number 3, lack of respect for law and order. And 5, just sheer indiscipline. And of course, lack of patriotism. So if you read my GTP, it is all there. The fact that I've been able to interrogate these matters is a good starting point for you to believe that this is a leader who understands what needs to be done, and if he's president, he will get it done. So that's the only reason why I can convince you. And then the maintenance culture, I'm very happy you raised this. We have no respect for maintenance. And it's part of the mindset. All we need is to build. And because of corruption, that's why we are always interested in starting new projects. And I can tell you the cost of corruption to this economy, if you calculate it, you'll be amazed. Just calculate 10 or 20% of all goods and services in all the ministries. Because there's no government contract in Ghana that does not have an element of 10 or 20%. So just do the calculation. You see the cost of corruption to our economy. So if now we are spending money and people are putting money into their pockets, where will be the money for you to do maintenance? Yeah, it doesn't happen that way. But it does not also mean that we should, as Ghanaians, not have this mental our mindset culture of maintenance. And if you look at the GTP, I've proposed that, yes, instead of government using our revenue now to build roads, let the private sector build the roads and use the money to do the maintenance. That's how the government comes in. Then Mr. Jantua, my own brother, Kwame wants to know how I'm going to deal with appointees who have personal interest. Kwame, is that not your question? So the first thing is there's a bill pending now before Parliament, the conduct of public officers, ethical code for the conduct of public officers. It means that as politicians, we don't even have an interest or the political will to have this passed, because obviously it will affect us. And so that is what we have to start with. And it's very comprehensive. If we can get that passed, that will be the starting point. But beyond that, Kwame, it's a question of leadership. It's a question of leadership. Everybody who knows me would tell you that there's no room around me for corruption. If that's the way you want to support me, then you are supporting the wrong horse. You understand me? So it's also about leadership. And when we say leadership, it's not just the president or the ministers. It is permeating the entire fabric of Ghanaian society. And part of this mindset change is how I think we can deal with it. But Kwame, I'm not sure whether you asked another question apart from this. LGBT, I am opposed to the extent possible to LGBTQ plus or whatever. And again, you see, I'm worried because it looks like when I speak, people are not hearing. That is my worry. I've made this pronouncement right from when the debate started. And obviously, for a number of reasons. It's against my faith. I'm a thoroughly-bred Anglican. In fact, I was named after an Archbishop of England, Alan John Knight. My name, Alan John, I was named after an Anglican Archbishop. So Christian faith as Christians do not support this kind of position. Secondly, anybody who knows the name Kyerematen, you know that my late father, Dr. Alexander Atayo Kyerematen, was one of the preeminent Ghanaians who actually have supported in those years the development of our culture, Ghanaian culture. And so LGBTQ is against our societal norms. If in other countries they don't have a problem with it, not in Ghana, because we have a different, I would say, societal values, and that is why I think that even this debate ought to have been curtailed long before now. And I want to encourage the president to go ahead and sign whatever needs to be signed so that this can come into play. If we are now buckling under the weight of our development partners, and that once you support such a bill, you are going to get into trouble, then we are in a very serious situation as a country. Because you need to have the kind of leadership that can support our own societal norms and our own culture. And at any rate, I think that now the matter is in court. And again, I will make an appeal to the Chief Justice to ensure that we consider public policy interest. There are arguments about human rights and things like that. Well, we don't want to get into another debate here, but I wanted it to be clear that I'm opposed in all forms and nature to the LGBTQ. Yes. Then the other point that was raised by, again, my sister, incidentally, Nanaya spoke after her brother, and we are all one family. And Nanaya was asking why I don't even talk about my achievements under the presidential special initiatives. So sometimes you do so much and you don't even have the time to talk about it. But when I introduced the presidential special initiatives under President Kwadwo, I was telling the president to identify just 4 sectors, only 4 sectors during his presidency, and that alone can transform Ghana. And why did I say so? One was garments and textiles, just producing garments for export. Bangladesh, one of the poorest countries in the world, exports every year $30 billion worth of garments to the US market. 30 billion, just from sewing shirts, trousers to the US market. If Ghana, we are doing even half of that, we don't need to go to the IMF. And what does it take for us to sew, to export? Ghanaians, we have good seamstresses and tailors. So that was one of the things that I started. And of course, oil palm. Malaysia learned how to cultivate oil palm from Ghana in the 60s. Now, Malaysia earns almost $20 billion from oil palm and its derivatives. 20 billion. What do we do with oil palm in Ghana? I won't go and talk for them to quote me. That Alan says it's only for palm nut soup. At least let's go beyond the palm nut soup. 20 billion. 20 billion. So if we're doing half of what Malaysia does, oil palm, that's 10 billion. We are doing half of what Bangladesh does, garment and textiles. That is 15. So that's 25 billion. And I also talked about cassava. Cassava is the biggest cash cow that Ghana can ever have. And when I introduced the new PSI for cassava, producing industrial starch from cassava, it became the first time that Guinness, Ghana, produced a cassava beer from cassava, from the factory that I built. And can you imagine us being able to turn cassava from a food crop to a cash crop? This is 2003 during President Kwadwo's time. because of the negativity of the mindset of Ghanaians. Oh, Alan is bringing cassava to kill people, this and that. And so the NDC had no interest or appetite to continue with it. By now, would have been one of the leading producers of industrial starch. And you know that every tablet that you swallow in the world has some form of starch. Every tablet. And so industrial starch is used in so many industrial preparations. So, Nanaya, I'm happy that you are speaking on behalf of your brother. The last one, of course, is salt. Salt, industrial salt, is like white gold. All over Africa, it's only 3-4 countries that have deposits of salt. And it's called white gold because of the use of industrial salt in most industries. You can, for example, not purify water without industrial salt, because that's one of the derivatives from processing industrial salt. You can't have an oil and gas industry without salt. Caustic soda, all those chemical industries come from salt. And we could go on and on and on. Now, you were also worried about how do we bring private sector into the investment in our transmission infrastructure. Nanaya, the point is that we have no other option. The DUNSO that has been sustained over a number of years is as a result of a number of things. Lack of generation capacity, but also underinvestment in our transmission infrastructure. Do you know when our transmission infrastructure was installed? The government does not have the resources and will never have the resources in the next 5-10 years to completely reinvest in our transmission infrastructure. So we'll continue to have transmission losses. And that's part of the reason why we have always an increase in the cost of energy. If you go to the matured economies, this argument about national security, it doesn't arise. If you go to the United States of America, there are private companies that are doing power generation, that are transmitting and distributing. And every state has a number of private companies that are responsible for different components of it, including transmission. So this argument about security, we have to start thinking about it carefully. It's the same argument that has been made in Ghana, that how can you ask the private sector to come and build airports for you? It's a security risk. Go to Gatwick Airport. Go to some of the major airports in the world. They are all private sector investments. So let's change our mindset about this. And value addition. Again, I've made comprehensive proposals in the GTP on adding value to our natural resources. In fact, that is why I said that by 2030, no raw material will be exported from Ghana unless there is minimum 60% addition. And I've listed all the strategic sectors that would lend themselves to value addition. Then, Odike, I think it's too late in the night for us to talk about Commander Sugar Factory. But just very quickly to suggest to you, don't buy into the NDC propaganda about Commander Sugar Factory. In fact, I'm surprised that the NDC by now has not been indicted with what they did with Commander Sugar Factory. You borrow $35 million to construct a factory. In October 2016, you're about to go into elections and you're not sure whether you win or lose. So you decide to sell it off to a private investor. And you lose the election. And then MPP comes in, our Minister for Trade and Industry. The first thing I say is that, look, this is a controversial project, but I don't believe in discontinuation of projects because there's a change of government. So I look into my books, and I tried to find out who won that bid for Commander Sugar Factory. So I invite the gentleman. He comes into my office, and I say, I look into the books, and I find that you won the build during the NDC period. So please, come and take over. I'm not interested in bringing anybody to contest you. The man had the courage to tell me that that factory is not worth the amount that they are asking for. Somebody who has won the bid says that he is not going to pay more than $15 million for that. A $35 million facility. I said, so then how did you win the bid? So he worked out on it. And I deliberately put together a technical team. I do things thoroughly and professionally. I went to the Institute of Engineers and I asked them to give me professionals to go and do a technical audit, because what I'm hearing is not adding up. NDC borrows $35 million. They commission a factory, and all of a sudden, the value, even without starting, has reduced to $50 million. They go and do an audit and come and confirm that it will not be more than $60 million. I said, then there's a problem. So I invite the transaction advisors. I don't want to mention the name, but a reputable international company. I said, you are transaction advisors. There seems to be a problem here. Government has given me approval to bring in new investors, because we cannot waste it away. All the people who bid again said the place is not worth more than $16 million. So there's convergence. So I asked this transaction advisor, go and find another valuer to come and do the. So they find another valuer. I don't want to be involved in this. They find another valuer. And lo and behold, now the value is $60 million. So I go back to cabinet and I said, look, instead of NDC making empty noises about Commander, they should actually be brought before court to answer. How come you borrow $35 million and invest in a factory, and now all of a sudden nobody is interested in it? In fact, people were suggesting that, why don't you abandon it? Why do you want to go and take over this white elephant? But obviously, it is part of my upbringing that we don't deny a community of this service just because of politics. So we decided that yes, I went back to cabinet and asked that if nobody is interested because there has been a forensic audit which shows that there was some malfeasance with the valuation, then allow somebody to come and manage the factory, at least to keep it going for some time. And that's what we did. And I'm happy to say that at least now the factory is still intact. So, Odike, I didn't want us to take executive time, but this comes up all the time, and it's because of the negative propaganda. Last but not the least, Empretech. Again, sometimes I have to blame myself, because people are saying, oh, but we didn't know this, you don't talk about what you've done. In the 1990s, the United States, the United Nations asked, they actually headhunted me and invited me to start a new program to develop Ghanaian entrepreneurs, 1990. And I resigned and took up this appointment. And I can say with pride that 60 to 70% of high potential, high flying indigenous Ghanaian companies have all passed through my hands one way or the other. Kasaprekun, all these companies, they all came through my Empretech program. And I can, and that's why Odike is, but it was not just about what I did with Empretech in Ghana. Because of the number of companies I built in Ghana, again, UNDP asked me to introduce the same program across other African countries. I started Enterprise South Africa. I started Enterprise Uganda. I started Enterprise Botswana. I started Enterprise Mauritius. All these countries, today I'm talking about building an enterprise economy in Ghana. I started this years ago, building enterprise economies in other countries. In 1994, when Mandela was released from a prison and was faced with the stark reality of developing black entrepreneurs, he was looking for experts around the world. I was one of the 7 international experts who was invited, and I started Enterprise South Africa many years back, in the 90s. So when today I talk about enterprise economy, I know what I'm talking about. If somebody is talking about 24-hour economy, where have they practiced this before? But I'm telling you what I've done in other economies. So that's about. Then Isaac, again, private sector financing. How do we control the private sector? But I think we are getting it wrong. I'm telling you that is what is happening in all the matured economies. You introduce policies, you attract private sector financing, and then you establish the regulatory environment. It's as simple as that. You bring in private capital to construct roads, and then you establish a toll regime that will make sure that they are not taking advantage of Ghanaians. And you give them a concession, 25 years, to be able to amortize their investments. So I don't think that we are understanding how, and there are models. There's build, operate, and transfer. There's engineering, procurement, construction, plus finance. These are different models used in all matured society. So Ghana must wake up. If we want to use government resources to build our roads, to build railway, to build this thing, it ain't gonna happen. I'm telling you. Professor Jampo, Prof, as for this question, as Koksipra would say, Adabraka, it's very difficult to comment on presidential temperament. And I think this must be, being a political science professor, this must be something that is a new concept. I can only talk about my own temperament. But make me president first, and you'll see, I can tell you how it will be like. So, Prof, then last but not the least, Mr. Agri. I think first it was amending the constitution, but I'm not sure, I can't remember what it was for. Sorry? Oh, presidential term? Oh, yes, amendment. No, you're absolutely right. Because candidates, when they are contesting for election, they all talk about amending the constitution. You see, but the difference is that I have established with clarity, first, the areas of constitutional reform that I will focus on. Number 2, I've given an implementation framework and structure to ensure that it doesn't remain on our shelves. So the difference is that, yes, people have been talking about it, but there's no framework for execution. And also, our reforms are all over the place. I have, for example, made a proposal, and it's one of the things that if I become president, I will ensure that it is implemented. That because there's the need to curtail the powers of the president, that I proposed the establishment of what I call a second chamber of parliament. So would abolish the Council of State and create a second chamber. And in the second chamber, you would have representation from our religious, faith-based organizations, from the business community, from civil society, from academia, from business, all the stakeholder institutions which the IEA is trying to build together, they will all have representatives in the second chamber. And the second chamber now has the responsibility of actually making appointments to what is called independent constitutional bodies. Electoral Commission. Why should the president be the one appointing the Electoral Commissioner? The Chief Justice. So how can they be independent? At the IGP. So take it to the second chamber. When you have all these very serious individuals representing stakeholders in our society, when they make a decision, you know nobody can control them. So there are many recommendations that I've made in terms of constitutional reform. Read my GTP and it will become clear because of time. Then last one was harmonizing, is it taxes? Yes. Again, if you read the GTP, I tell you it's very clear. The reason why we're having a problem with our tax structure is because Ghana has turned upside down our tax regime. If you go to any serious country, the countries earn more revenue from direct taxes than from indirect taxes. Ghana is the other way around. We are earning more revenue from indirect taxes, which is through ports, because we feel it is easy to collect those taxes. But there's no country that has achieved significant growth which has that kind of tax regime. So if Alan becomes president, I'll turn it around. And then we reduce the level of taxes to make companies become competitive. When they have made money, then you can ask them to pay a little more. That's how it is done. And then, of course, also, when you formalize the informal sector, you bring a lot more into the tax rate, and then we reduce per unit the amount of tax paid by the few who are currently paying taxes. And also, of course, Ghanaians, we should learn to pay taxes. If you go to the United States, the 15th of April is a landmark day in the United States. 15th of April, ask anyone, they will tell you. Wherever you are in the world, if you don't file your taxes by the 15th of April, you go to jail. Ghanaians, there is no compulsion on us. And so nobody even cares about filing taxes, even including professionals who should know better. So that's the kind of mindset, the new regime that I'm talking about. As for the stability of the city, I can tell you, there's short, medium, and long-term solutions. I've outlined all that in my GTP. But let us remember that the exchange rate is a function of supply and demand of foreign exchange. If you have more foreign exchange, it will put pressure on your local currency, and the value of your currency will rise. So we have to be able to produce and export. We have no other way, and we have to reduce our imports. It's a country, we are importing everything. And we have to start producing some of the things that we are importing here locally. That will conserve foreign exchange while we earn more money from exports. But in the short term, there are other policies. Currently, there's what we call the retention policy. When you export, there's a certain percentage of your foreign currency that you must bring into Ghana. People don't respect that law. And they actually retain the foreign exchange from their exports in foreign banks. Number two, you can only get foreign exchange in Ghana through three sources: the banks, the Forex Bureau, and black market. We cannot stand here and talk about black market because it's legal. We know the banks are properly controlled. In the short term, we have to control the Forex Bureaus because they are trading in foreign currency, and some of them are doing speculative trading. They can write any exchange rate on their board just to get more dollars into their, so they have to be curtailed. Last but not the least, the main reason why the cedi is continuously depreciating is that people have lost faith in the Ghanaian economy. That's the truth of the matter. Everybody is trying to retain the value of whatever they have in foreign exchange because they don't have faith in the local currency. So even when they have no business buying dollar, they earn cedis and they go and buy dollars to keep. And that is why I'm saying that. Announce that Alan will become the next president and the economy will come back to life. When people have confidence or that this man understands the economy, there will be no capital outflows. Right now, there's capital flights. People don't have confidence in the economy. They want to see a signal that things will go beyond NDC and NPP, that there's going to be a change, and then the economy will start rebalancing. So on that note, Madam, I yield back to you.
Another round of applause for Chief. Thank you, Chief. We'll take some final remarks, almost final remarks from Nana Hema. Nana Hema, let me bring you the microphone. Nana Hema has something short to tell us. Please, a round of applause.
Thank you for the opportunity. I am Mamaga Agumekoswa the Fifth, the Paramount Queen Mother of Lugba Traditional Area, representing all Queen Mothers and mothers in Ghana. These are some few words that we are sending out to all our aspirants for 2024 elections. Honorable, what we have as mothers to tell all of you is very simple. We want peace in the upcoming elections. We are women. We are mothers. When there is chaos in this country, we don't know where to run to because all our neighboring countries are not conducive. Why are we preaching this? Elections are won at the polling stations. So we are pleading with you that in selection of people who represent your various political parties at the polling stations, you should look out for people who are honest, people who are truthful, people you trust, that whatever outcome they will bring from the polling station is the right, or is the best, or is the one that favors you, or that is acceptable to you. Because the war songs rises from the polling stations. If the one representing your political party over there brings you a wrong figure, and then another person also brings the other, then it turns to chaos. So we are just begging you that in selection of these people, you should be careful in selecting them. Not those who go to the polling station there for their self-interest. Some may collect some result in exchange of money. Maybe you wouldn't know. They will bring it to you. You sit in the comfort of your zone thinking that at the end of this election, you emerge the winner. And then when the result comes, you say, no, it's unacceptable. I will not do that. This is not acceptable. And it will turn to a different thing. We are pleading with you. We want peace. Thank you.
Nana Hema is reiterating that we want peace. I'm pretty sure Chief wants peace for Ghana as well. And thank you so much, Nana Hema. Thank you all. Chief wants to, people are asking about the GTP, and Chief would like to make a presentation to Dr. Alberta Hagen, who would receive the GTP on behalf of the Institute of Economic Affairs. So, Doc, please, if you may, come.
I'm autographing it for.
And Honorable is autographing it for Doc. Also, the representative of the Achimota School and God's Grace School, if you are here, kindly make your way up here and receive a copy of the GTP. Achimota School, And God's Great School.
That's one of my alma maters.
Oh, Achimota School.
At the Sarah College, and then sixth form in.
Sixth form in Achimota.
Yes.
Oh, nice. Are there any Santa Clausians here? Oh, quite a number. I'm sure you are proud to have Doc as an alum of your school.
Young man.
Please come onto the podium for me.
Are you? Okay.
Are the photographers here?
Okay. Good.
Yeah, Achimota School.
Hi. Which house are you?
I'm in New House.
Oh, okay. All right. Good. You got it. Okay. All right. Doc.
Economic Affairs, Dr. Alberta Hagen.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much.
Please, a round of applause for Chief Alan Cash, the man Alan, the man who understands the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, he's been phenomenal. Thank you, sir. I'd like to say a big thank you to all of you who made it for our evening encounter with Honorable Alan John Kwadwo Kyerematen, to our stakeholders who came, to Your Excellencies, clergy present, Nana Hema, Mr. Kaumoni, all of you who asked questions. I'd love to know all of you and to mention your names, but forgive me, I'm unable to. We are grateful to all of you. So on behalf, also the media, we say thank you. On behalf of the Institute of Economic Affairs, we say thank you, Ayiko, thank you for coming. We would have other evening encounters, and we would love to have you here and to host you once again as we have other evening encounters. My name is Priscilla Adepa Adehwating. I've been your moderator for this evening. We'll take the closing prayer from Most Reverend Dr. Paul Boafo, and it's good night. Please, a round of applause. And for your moderator, you did not clap for me. Right after, we will take photographs. So there's a website, so I would announce that after the prayer. And
once again, humbly, can we rise and take the closing prayer? You are the beginning and end of all things. So we started with you. And Lord, you have brought us to a successful end. And we say thank you and thank you and thank you, oh God. We thank you for the life of the Honorable Alan John Kwadwo Kyerematen, for his life and for his vision and for his programs and strategies for our dear nation, Ghana. We ask that in all that he has purpose doing, you will be his strength, and you will be his guide, and you will see him through it all. So do we pray for our dear nation, Ghana. We ask for your peace, the peace which transcends all, and peace that comes to your people, spiritually, physically, and in all aspects of our lives. From now to the end of these elections, may we continue to receive the blessings that come from you, that at the end we shall have cause to say, it is you who has made it possible. You brought us here in your peace. You granted us genuine mercies. As we break and go our separate ways, may your face go with us. Defend and protect us from every peril and danger on our roads. Tonight, may you guard and guide over us. And when we see a new dawn, we'll continue to praise you for who you are. Bless the work of this institute And let everything that we have purpose doing in the course of this year come to the flourishing that you have made. Now, let us go in the peace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and may the blessing of God Almighty, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit remain with all of us now and evermore. Amen.
Thank you, Most Reverend. Ladies and gentlemen, for all of you who would like to have access to the GTP, please be seated. You can access the GTP at www.alankyerematen.org. The Alan Kyerematen is AlanKyerematen. So the Kyerematen does not come with a G. alankyerematen.org. O-R-G. www.alankyerematen.org. We also have some copies of the GTP available at the IEA. Honorable Alan has been so magnanimous to leave us about 20 copies, so we can also make that accessible to you, so you can come see us at our reception and we can make that accessible to you. Please, we would take some photographs. Make sure you will find yourself documented and part of our memories, please, before you leave. So, Honorable, if you can kindly help me, strong men. Honorable and his running mate. No. Clergy present, the executives of the Institute of Economic Affairs. Clergy first, please. Dr. Mensah, please, you are taking the photograph. Second group, the students at Achimota School. Okay, Nana Hema, please come. And then the Achimota School, please get ready. And hold on. Nana Hema. Achimota School, are you ready? Okay, Nana Hema, please join for the photo. The students at Achimota School, please move to the podium. Please, can you make way so we can take the photographs? We will take. Please, the taller ones can be at the back. Shortest in front. Please, a lot more people could be at the back. I think too many people are crowded here. Please, some of you could be a bit behind. Sweetheart, you are hidden. Please come in front, okay? Yes.
Are you the one who moderated for the Childhood Cancer Society?
for the 2024 general elections in Ghana. He is the founder and leader of the Movement for Change, a political organization established to inspire and lead the process to change and transform Ghana into a prosperous, united, and peaceful nation. He is a family man, a lawyer, a management consultant with incorruptible track record over the years in public service. He will be at the Institute of Economic Affairs for their evening encounter on the 1st of October 2024 from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. All stakeholders present. All stakeholders, UTAG, TUC, all stakeholders here, CSOs, all of you. Please, can you get a bit closer? Okay. No, this is the stakeholder. Please join the stakeholders. Oh, madam, please join. Honorable Kwadwo Kyerematen is a presidential candidate for the 2024 general elections in Ghana. He is the founder and leader of the Movement for Change, a political organization established to inspire and lead the process to change and transform Ghana into a prosperous, united, and peaceful nation. He is a family man, a lawyer, a management consultant with incorruptible track record over the years in public service. He will be at the Institute of Economic Affairs for their evening encounter on the 1st of October 2024 from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. to share his vision with the Ghanaian public. See you there.